Call the meeting to order. Ask you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. First items tonight is the consent agenda. Item A, approve the minutes of the following City Council work session, March 21st. City Council regular meeting, March 21st. Item B, authorize the mayor to execute a land lease with M&N Structures Incorporated to rent land adjacent to the property with identification number 21.0660010, the amount of $1,200 and expiring December 31st of this year for material handling purposes. Item C, approve the off-sale, on-sale, and Sunday liquor licenses from July 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2024 for the following: J&N Schlegel Enterprises, Blue Note, Axley Holdings at the Corner Bar, Two Songs Liquor, and off-sale only. Approve the Liquor Wine Club 3.2 license from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, and waive the fee for said license for the following: Winston Baseball Association, Incorporated, Winston Wildcats at Dennis M. Campbell Field. Approve the 3.2 off-sale liquor license from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 for the following: Casey's General Store. Item D, adopt resolution R-23-10, accepting a contribution from McLeod Cooperative Power Association in the amount of $2,600 to be dedicated to the Winston Volunteer Fire Department's capital improvement plan. Item E, authorize the interim city administrator and the city's human resource attorney to finalize the city administrator employment agreement, and authorize the mayor and city clerk treasurer to execute a city administrator employment agreement between the city of Winston and Mr. Neil Schlegel. And item F, approve the claims list for March 2nd of this year. We'll have the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I do have one question. I did not see a liquor license request from Kegs Bar.
From what I understand, when going through this with Adam, they're always late.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll
They've been
motion,
called and they are aware of it.
I'll motion the consent agenda is approved as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Tonight we have a public hearing, which I'll open up in a second here. This is in resolve to a tax abatement on CR Realty LLC. And Shannon's here to go through this thing, and then once he's done, we will open it up to the floor for any comments. And after that, the comment section is done, then I'll ask for somebody to close the public hearing, and then we'll either pass it or reject the passage of it. So if you want to take it from there.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Shannon Sweeney with David Brown Associates. In your packet were a few documents from me and the city attorney. They include a cover letter that talks about the proposed tax abatement, a resolution which the council will be asked to consider following the public hearing that provides the requested tax abatement and authorizes execution of a tax abatement agreement, and the third document being the tax abatement agreement itself. Under Minnesota statute, cities are able to use tax abatement as a means of promoting economic development. There's other types of tasks that tax abatement can handle, but economic development is one of them. And ultimately, conversation was initiated with DK Realty Group more than a year ago when they were intending to purchase and renovate 591 Main Avenue and spend, I believe, more than $1 million indicated in their application to renovate that facility and create a dental office. They had discussed tax abatement assistance at that time and then came back with an application more recently. As mentioned in my letter, ultimately, the property taxes, well, the value for the facility went from $140,000 in payable 22 to $467,300 in payable 2023. results in a total estimated tax of $11,130 for payable '23. The city's portion is estimated to increase from $1,608 to $5,693, or a difference of $4,085. Ultimately, the request was for 5 years of assistance, and what we typically do when we structure an abatement like this is, if it is to be approved, we include a duration and an amount that are both capped, and so either will occur first. If ultimately the property tax valuation continues to increase, there would be some possibility paying the abatement off early, but ultimately we're expecting that we're going to cap the abatement payments at $4,000 a year for 5 years under the terms of the agreement. In no event would the abatement exceed the actual taxes attributed to the project. So the market value for the facility as it existed prior to renovation will continue to be monitored as compared to the market value post-renovation. And so if for some reason the market value declined from $467,300 and it wasn't generating that supplemental $4,000 in city property tax, the reimbursement amount would be less because it would be based on the actual incremental increase in property taxes paid. If it's determined to be appropriate to proceed with the requested abatement, again, there's a resolution in your packet that provides the specific terms of the 5-year duration, the $4,000 per year, not to exceed $20,000. The abatement agreement itself, again, reiterates those terms and provides an agreement that we would have with the property owner. So, more than happy to answer questions of the council or the public.
The property owner agrees with this?
It was pretty close to the request, so I'm assuming so.
Okay,
I haven't spoken to them directly, though, Tom.
okay.
Okay, then we're looking for any public comment. Step up and give us your name and address for secretary.
Glenn Weibel, 540 First Street North. I'm neither a client of the facility or am I related to anybody involved, but I do rise in this instance in support of this request. I think what they did to the building, excuse me, what they did to the building and what they did to that intersection makes it more credible compared to what was sitting there for 10 years that I'm aware of. So I do rise in support of the request.
Thank you. Anybody else? Just for the record, the staff has not gotten any comments, either phone calls or emails on this. So, last call for anybody else.
Motion, we close the public
We
hearing?
have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's closed. Now it's up to the council. We have a chance to ask questions or to make a motion to accept this. Go ahead.
I would just make the additional comment that, what's proposed is consistent with past actions of the council in trying to promote investment in the downtown. This isn't the first time that we've looked at subsidizing a project in the downtown area. Anything that we can do to get additional investment has been important, at least a priority for the city council in the past. And so I would say this is consistent with lots of other stuff they've attempted to try to promote that investment. So thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Shannon. Looking for a motion then?
Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to adopt Resolution R-23-11, authorizing a tax abatement on property within the city of Winsted for CK Realty Group LLC, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to execute an abatement agreement.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Under new business tonight, we have the 2022 audit report. So, you're up.
Well, good evening. My name is Justin McGraw. I'm with CDS, the city's auditors, and I'm here tonight to present to you the 2022 audit report. And you probably got a few different documents from us, either paper or digitally. The report you see on your screen is the presentation we're going to follow tonight. All the information in there is derived from your audited financial statements themselves, as well as our management letter. So if you're looking for more detail or more information on some of the stuff I'm covering tonight, those are great places to start. Otherwise, feel free to stop me as I'm going along and ask any questions you may have. On page 1 here, well, page 1 and page 2, it's a summary of what our independent auditor's report is. It outlines responsibilities of both parties, you as the city, us as auditors, and it describes what the intent of our audit is to provide reasonable assurance on your financial statements that they are free from material misstatements. So not absolute assurance, but reasonable assurance, and the auditing standards we follow to come to that conclusion. So it'd be on page 1 there, in the big bold letters up at top, your statements are presented fairly in our opinion, so they can be used or relied upon for gauging performance of the city, as well as for future decision-making purposes. Thank you, Raquel. And then on page 3, we'll jump into the numbers of the city, starting with your statement of net position. This is the overall balance sheet of the city, if you will. And we look at it in 2022 and compared to 2021, you can see some of the changes in your balances between the years. Starting at the top, current and other assets, these would be items like your cash balances, accounts receivable, prepaid expenses, those types of items. You can see here you did have an increase in those balances in 2022 compared to 2021. That's largely due to notes receivable owed to the city for the Minnesota Investment Fund that Millburn has owed to the city. Then, of course, the city then would owe that back to the Minnesota Investment Fund if Millburn has to repay that. And then as well as due from other government amounts related to all the projects at the airport. So you took cash, converted it into a physical asset at the airport, and now you're going to get reimbursed from the State Department of Transportation as well as the FAA. And that kind of leads into my next item, your capital assets, your non-current assets. These are primarily your capital assets. Think infrastructure, building, equipment, those types of items. You had an increase in 2022 compared to 2021 with some of the new projects, infrastructure projects, continued work out at the airport, as well as new equipment that was purchased during the year. All that outpaced your existing depreciation on your outstanding assets. So you saw an increase there as well. On the bottom half, your current liabilities, you saw an increase there, and that's largely, again, related to the amounts owed to the Minnesota Investment Fund from Millburn. The city largely acts as a pass-through in that transaction. As those amounts are forgiven or repaid, you'll see that decrease in the future here. Your non-current liabilities, these are your net pension liability with PARA, as well as your debt balances. You did have an increase in your non-current liabilities in 2022 compared to 2021, largely related to your pension liability. So PARA's in investments did not perform as they expected in 2022, so their fiduciary net position decreased, while that pension liability stayed pretty similar. You have a larger gap there. Now your net pension liability increases. This is something that's largely impacted by actuarial assumptions and valuations. So I guess, if you don't like your net pension liability, wait a year and see what the actuaries come back with next year. And then at the very bottom, your net position of the city. So if you could sell off all the assets of the city and pay off all your debts, this is largely what would be left over. And you did experience an increase in some of the components of your net position. That net investment in capital assets, that's all your capital assets less any debt owed against them. Your continued payment of your debts, as well as increases in your capital asset balances drove that impact that you're seeing there. But overall, your net position in the city increased, and that's kind of been the trend we've been seeing over the years. It's a steady increase in the net position of the city. And this is important to remember, this is all activities, all operations, all funds of the city on one slide here. On the next slide, we'll look at the general fund individually, and we look at its cash and investment balances, not only in 2022, but the prior 4 years, so you can kind of see the trend of where those balances have been at. You did see a decrease in your general fund cash balances, about $260,000 in 2022 compared to 2021. There's a note at the bottom there. You do have a large amount of funds that you're borrowing out from the general fund to other funds of the city. Most of it is related to the airport project. So, as the reimbursements from the State Department of Transportation and the FAA come in, you'll be able to pay that back to the general fund, hopefully here in 2023. On page 5, we'll look at the activity of the general fund. Your revenues, your expenses, and then your overall fund balance. Similar trend in 2022 of revenues exceeding your expenditures. And that's driving that increase you're seeing in your fund balance. Looking at your unassigned fund balance, or fund balance that's largely free to spend on whatever you at the council level deem necessary, you're sitting around 9 months of unassigned fund balance. So that's a pretty good ratio. We as auditors like to recommend 6 months of unassigned fund balance. You know, your property tax revenues usually come in about 6 months apart. So 6 months kind of gives you that gap, or that reserve to cover that gap between those periods of large influxes of cash in the general fund. And then on page 6, we'll look at the individual sources of revenue for the general fund. Historically, you know, your property taxes have been the largest source of revenue for the general fund. Intergovernmental revenue is also up there. And intergovernmental revenue is just one item I want to touch on here. You know, in 2020, you had the CARES Act dollars that came in. 2021, 2022, you have the ARPA funds that you've now received. There's not a large another source of intergovernmental revenue scheduled to come in 2023. So your intergovernmental has been a little bit elevated over the last 3 years. I would expect that to come back down to probably pre-2020 levels. So this is something to keep in mind looking ahead here in 2023. But overall, your sources besides your intergovernmental revenue have been fairly consistent. You saw that large increase in your property taxes, but that was largely reflected in your levy anyways. So nothing too surprising on the revenue side. On the next slide, we have your expenditures. And we look at these by department. Which department is using those funds that are being brought in by those different revenue sources? General government, public safety are the departments with the highest amount of expenditures in 2022. And historically, they've been those largest departments. And one thing, you know, unless you change the operations of the city dramatically, I would expect this to stay pretty similar going forward. One thing that can impact it is capital outlay, or spending on capital expenditures. That can have an impact on which department may have a larger share of those expenses in the general fund from year to year. On the next slide, we move away from the general fund, move into some of the other governmental funds, starting with your special revenue funds. So you have a handful of special revenue funds here in the city. Those special revenue funds are set up to serve a specific purpose and have a dedicated source of revenue to facilitate that purpose. The fire department had a decrease in its fund balance during the year, largely due to capital outlay. So capital purchases for the fire department, as well as transfers out to the fire equipment fund for future capital purchases. The EDA had a large decrease, and that was due to a loss on sale of land. The land was carrying at a value of about $70,000. Was sold for, I think, for $1. So you realized a loss on that sale there as that land was sold. And then the airport fund saw an increase in its fund balance in 2022, largely caused by the increase in fuel sales, or fuel revenue at the airport. So you had fuel on hand really at the end of 2021 that was carried at a lower cost and then sold for a higher price. So you saw that increase in your fund balance recognized just by the sales price versus the cost of goods sold on that fuel. On the next slide, we have the capital project funds. Capital project funds are typically set up to account for either one large capital project, or like your capital equipment fund, those revolving capital expenditures from year to year. Your largest increase was for the Pheasant Run Improvement Project. There was a debt issuance in 2022 to pay for that project. So you saw an increase in your fund balance there. There's some cash balance on hand at the end of 2022 to wrap up that project. The 2015 Airport Improvement Project did see an increase in its fund balance due to reimbursements from not only the state but the federal government for their contribution towards that project. And then your capital equipment had an increase as well. That's largely due to the budgeted transfers into that fund. So the budgeted transfers outpaced those planned expenditures out of that fund as well. Now you do have a few funds, the CSH5 and the McLeod Wetland. They're sitting with deficit fund balances currently. That's largely due to incurring expenses in those funds, but not having funding received yet. pay for those expenses. So I know the county has a large piece of that, or of those projects. As that funding comes in, that deficit fund balance should disappear. So on the next slide, we move away from your government funds, look at your business type activities, starting with the water fund. You did have a slight decrease in the cash of your water fund balance. And that's largely due, looking at your cash flow statement, to the debt and principal payments on some of the water fund's debt. So you'll see it here in a little bit as we go through some of my other slides. But the cash provided by operations isn't quite meeting the cash needs for to service the debt of the water fund. So that's one thing auditors usually like to hit on is reviewing those rates consistently, making sure that the rates are set at an appropriate level to not only pay those day-to-day operating costs of the fund, but also those capital needs and the debt service requirements that come with infrastructure improvements and equipment improvements, those types of things. On the next slide, we look at the activity of the water fund. You can see here, so I touched on it a little bit earlier, but your operating revenues were overtaken by your operating expenses during the year. So, and part of that is interest as well, interest expense related to the debt. So you saw a decrease in your net position. One thing to remember here is a big expense of the water fund is depreciation, or the wear and tear of current existing assets. Now that is a non-cash expense, excuse me, but if you can cover as much of that depreciation through your user fees, it's going to help you out down the line when eventually that equipment or that infrastructure needs to be replaced or repaired, and you'll hopefully have that cash on hand to weather some of those, maybe not wholesale replacement expenses, but some of those more major expenses that you'll see when it comes to maintenance and supply costs. On page 12, this is the slide I'd like to be put in there to kind of give you an idea of the cash that's really provided by operations of the water fund versus the debt requirements of that water fund. So we remove the depreciation to get a better idea of that operation-related income. We look at your debt requirements. You can see here in 21 and 22, the cash provided by operations isn't meeting those debt service requirements, and that's where you're seeing that decrease in that cash balance that we discussed a couple slides back. And you have some water fund debt rolling off here, I think, I want to say starting in 2024, 2025, but your longest debt is still 16 years out. So you're going to have those debt service payments probably for the foreseeable future. So this is, again, kind of relates back to reviewing those water rates, making sure that you're bringing enough revenue into that fund to cover not only those day-to-day operations, but the debt service requirements that come along with it. And then on the next slide, we'll move on to the sewer fund. Sewer fund had a slight increase, in cash in 2022 compared to 2021. In 2021, you had some maybe larger repairs in that fund. It had part of the water meter project was accounted for or paid for by the sewer fund. There was a cured in place piping that was done last year. You didn't have those larger expenses in 2022, so you kind of saw a bounce back in that cash balance in that sewer fund. Next slide is the operations of the sewer fund. One item on here, you can see the sewer fund rates seem to be set up to cover those operating costs, including depreciation. The exception of 2019 it was a little bit larger because you had a large loss. That's when the new sewer plant came online. We disposed of the old sewer plant, and you had a loss on that sewer plant, the old wastewater treatment plant. So you can see you got a change in net position in 2022 that's higher than 2021, largely due to a decrease in your expenses in that fund. And then on the next slide, similar to what we did with the water fund, we look at the sewer fund. We remove depreciation to see the cash brought in by that sewer fund compared against the debt requirements of the sewer fund, and it's able to maintain that margin. So that's great for the sewer fund, and you're seeing that impact on your overall cash balance in that fund. I think the sewer fund does have some debt rolling off as well, but I think it still has debts out there through at least the next 15 years. So similar to the water fund, it's going to have a debt payment for the foreseeable future.
Before we move on, sewer fund, what should be the optimum balance for this city?
As far as you're looking like the net position or your cash
Right.
balance?
Guess where I'm going to go with this. If the sewer fund is healthy, the water fund is hurting. And when we talk about raising rates, everybody loves in town to
Yep.
see the rates increase. If we did a lesser amount on the sewer fund to make up for the balance on the water fund so that it would equal out across the board.
Yep.
Is that a possibility?
I think it's actually a great possibility. The water fund is the one that seems to need the help a little bit more than the sewer fund. The one thing I would encourage you about the sewer fund is a large portion of that is professional services. So if you can kind of lock down or nail down what those expenses are going to be for the foreseeable future, that'll help you budget better for the, I guess, really the revenue needs on the sewer side as well.
I guess if we could soften the blow by taking some of the pressure from the water
Yep.
sewer and using it towards the water fund, that would be,
Yeah, I mean, because your sewer fund's performing pretty well. You know, like I said, that cash balance is growing. Your net position is growing in that sewer fund. And the sewer fund doesn't seem to need the extra revenue, at least as of 12/31/2022. If your expenses go up in there, then I would maybe dial back on not increasing it as much. But really, it's the water fund that we're seeing has that need. It's not a dire need right now, but it is something to start thinking about or have that conversation. So 2 or 3 years from now, the sewer fund the water fund is having to borrow money from the general fund or the sewer fund to cover maybe a large unplanned expense or something. So yeah, I would recommend, if that's, you're trying to soften that blow a little bit on the impact of those rate increases, it would be not on the water side, it would be on that sewer side.
because that'll be something we'll talk about in July when we start our budget.
Okay,
Okay.
there you go. Water up, sewer's okay. All right. And then in addition to auditing the balances of the city, we also look at compliance. And there's a few different compliance rule-making bodies that we look into, one of them being the state of Minnesota, the city's compliance with state statutes. So we look at items like conflicts of interest, contract and bidding, depository of public funds, debt. And we're happy to report through our testing we came across no issues of non-compliance. So as auditors, that usually tells us a couple different things. One, that your staff here know what those laws are, and two, they're making sure they're being followed. So hats off. I know Adam will get credit for 2022, but Raquel and Amanda, everybody here, for making sure that they're following those state statutes. And then we also look at internal control, so how financial information flows through the city. We have a couple items. If you've sat through my presentation before, you probably heard me talk about them. The auditor prepared financial statements and limited segregation of duties. So with limited segregation of duties, with an office staff that's, like I said, a little bit on the smaller side, it's very difficult to break up the authorization of a transaction, the record keeping, and the custody of the assets related to that transaction. So that's a risk at the city with having a smaller staff. One way to mitigate that is you at the council level, you're another set of eyes. That claim listing that comes in your council packet, if you see an unusual vendor, unusual amount, you're another check and balance in that process. Ask that question to hopefully mitigate the risk that comes with having a smaller office staff. And then the auditor prepared financial statements. So while the products you got from us are derived from your financial records, we put them in that format. So this is something we have to disclose to you at the council level. Then on the next slide, we issue, we call it a management letter. It's a letter from us as the auditors to you at the council level to let you know how the audit went. Any change in accounting practices. Last year, I know when I was out here, we talked about the new accounting standard related to leases. You were impacted by that new lease standard. You have some new items in your financial statements related to lease receivables. I think for the airport and maybe some cell tower site leases. So you saw some new items in there. It did impact your balance sheet essentially. So that's new this year. And then any disagreements we had with your team here, we're happy to report none. And it's not just your staff here, but we also ask a lot of your vendors, your engineers, your banks, the county, the state. Everybody was very helpful in getting us to the point we're at tonight, so we can deliver the audit. And then any recommendations we have on the next slide. This is more of an informational item, and it's another new accounting standard that's coming out that will take effect here in 2023. So it's related to subscription-based IT arrangements, similar to the lease standard. Think the lease standard, but for software or cloud storage. If you have long-term agreements for software support, cloud storage, software usage, we'll look at in 2023 possibly recording a subscription-based asset and then a liability for those future payments to be made over the life of that agreement. So that is a new item, and we've talked with your team here about it. They're kind of aware of what the the standard entails, and they're going to keep their eyes out and start generating a list of potential agreements that could be impacted by this new accounting standard. So with that, on the last slide is my contact information. So if you're looking through some of this stuff in your free time and you have more questions, or you wish I would ask me this, or wish you would ask me that, feel free to call, email, or if you're ever in Litchfields, swing by our office and you'll find me there. So with that, I'll open up to any other questions anybody might have.
I have one. You said the staff was very cooperative and helps you out.
Yes, they were.
If they were difficult and didn't help you out, would you charge us more?
Absolutely, twice. I'd double it.
Okay, so being they're good, we should be charged less, correct?
Well, the rate is set with the expectation being good, and it escalates from there. So,
Just trying to get us
yeah.
points
Good luck.
back. We have a water fund shortage, so I'm looking.
Yeah, so charge it all to the general fund. All
Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We're looking for a motion to approve the budget report, audit report.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 audit report.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Steve, second.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Transportation Economic Development Infrastructure Program application. Jake, take that for me.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this is related to the County 5 extension project. Design is done, plans have been approved by MnDOT and by the county. So this is kind of a housekeeping item for the grant itself. This project did receive a Transportation Economic Development Infrastructure grant in the amount of $750,000. So that was very good news. After discussions with the county, that grant is to be split evenly between the city and the county. So $375,000 each. So this motion tonight is a requirement of the grant that the city will have to do this, and then the county will also have to do this just to confirm that they have the necessary funds available for the portions of the project that are not covered by the grant. So grant eligible costs total about $4.4 million. Take out the grant share, and then the county has approximately $3.4 million remaining, and then the city has approximately $237,000 remaining. So this is a motion to that the city is stating they have those funds available to cover the share of this project, of this remaining project cost. So
Any
otherwise,
questions for Jake?
I was going to say bid opening is next week, so we will be back, assuming things proceed here, we will be back looking for an award, construction contract award from the city council and from the county board also would be the next step after this one.
No questions? Looking for a motion then?
Make a motion to adopt Resolution R-23-12, a resolution of support for the Transportation Economic Development Infrastructure Program application for the County Road 5 Extension Project from County State Aid Highway 1 to County State Aid Highway 9.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Jake, you're on for this one too. This is the roadway drainage and utility easement agreement between Charles and Leanne Gutzman.
Yes, so same project. The Gutzmans own the property on the east side of County 9, so just beyond the project limits. The design includes a southbound right turn lane and then a northbound bypass lane on County 9. The city previously executed an agreement with the Barfnicks that covered some other property for the main corridor as well as the right turn lane. So this covers the easement necessary for the bypass lane. And then consistent with the joint powers agreement with McLeod County, the city is responsible for property negotiations and acquisitions, and the county has those other larger costs that were just referenced in that previous memo. So this agreement would take care of that total cost of $10,000 to the Gutzmans, and all the other legal work, legal descriptions, whatnot, have already been prepared with this. We would just get it all executed if this is approved here tonight. Any questions on this one?
Does the easement have a term?
Forever, in perpetuity,
That's a good term.
yes.
Looking for a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve the roadway drainage and utility easement agreement between Charles and Leanne Gutzman. Considering a motion support of the roadway drainage and utility easement agreement with Charles and Leanne Gutzman in conjunction with McLeod County for a non-exclusive permanent roadway.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. One more time, Jake?
Yes.
This is the Winston Municipal Airport 10D Snow Removal Equipment SRE bids result in award recommendation.
Yes, so the airport project for 2023 was the acquisition of snow removal equipment. Bids were received yesterday. Not too surprising based on the limited companies that do this, but one bid for two different items from two different companies. One was for a loader with a wing plow for a base bid price of $411,935.36. Then the other bid for a snow blower attachment for $188,898.00. So the city obtains entitlement funds every year from the government, and with this project, it was expected the city was going to be short on that balance, which is correct. So the city has a separate agreement with Pine River to take their entitlement funds this year and then give the city back, give the city back the entitlement amount in the future. So this base bid amount of the $411,935,000 does fit with that scenario. Unfortunately, the snow blower price does not. So the recommendation here is to award bid alternate 1, not bid alternate 2. And one important thing of note, because of the grant dollars associated with this, as mentioned in the memo, that we're asking that the bid be contingent upon the manufacturer and supplier providing this waiver that shows they meet the Buy America requirements. So,
Which is like 60%, right?
correct, yes. Yep, so they sometimes have a challenge with that, and they haven't gotten that waiver in yet, so we're still waiting for that. So if the council proceeds, we would ask it to be contingent upon that item. During the workshop, we did briefly chat about the snow blower attachment. I did touch base with Nick between meetings, our airport consultant who works on this. So as we suspected, we would have to do another entitlement share like Pine River. We have not had those conversations. We'd likely have to find a different suitor for that. So the timing on that would be problematic. And then more importantly, he said that if we pursued that, that would delay the next project back, because again, we get that $150,000 a year. And he said, and the airport commission is strongly supportive of the next project, which has to do with building a hangar. So it would likely push that out as well. So just something to consider with that bid alternate 2.
Any questions for Jake? Looking for a motion then.
A motion to accept bid alternate 1 from RDO Equipment Company for the snow removal equipment acquisition in the amount of $411,935.36, contingent upon the manufacturer and supplier providing a Type 3 waiver for Federal Aviation Administration, FAA Buy American requirements, and final execution of the FAA and Minnesota Department of Transportation, MnDOT, grant funding documents.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks,
Thank you.
Jake.
We'll get working on the award for that, the contracts, as well as the FAA agreement to get, because there can be a long lead time on these items. So the intent would be to have everything in place before snowfall, ideally. But
It was nice seeing you, Jake.
Yeah.
nice to see you, Councilor Oleg.
We've come to the organization report tonight. Tonight's Howard Lake Waverly Winston Schools. You step up to the podium and talk to us.
Talk to us. For the last time.
No, you guys can stay there. You're on after me. So I brought a few guests with me tonight. So I figured you would appreciate that, Mr. Mayor and council members. As you know, when I come present, I usually like to talk, and it ends up being a little bit long. So I put them after me, thinking that I'll stick to my time frame. So first, I just want to start out by saying thank you to the Winsted City and City Council for the last 17 years. As you've heard, maybe, I'm moving on to a new position next year to be the executive director at Kaleidoscope Charter School in Otsego. But I have certainly appreciated all the support from the city council over the years, and appreciate you inviting us down to present to you. So tonight I have with me Dr. Stephanie Keene, our high school principal, and also Miss Jennifer Olson, our elementary principal, who will present a little bit of an update on what's going on at the high school and also at the elementary level. But just to give you a little update on where things are at in terms of the district, we've had a very successful school year. As you know, the last few years, especially during the COVID, was a challenge, and presented a little bit of information about getting through some of those challenges with you over the last few years. But I'm happy to say that our district enrollment this year has stayed pretty consistent. We're about 1,280 students district-wide in K through 12. Normally, from the start of the school year to the end of the school year, you see a little bit of a dip in enrollment as the year goes on. People move, looking for different options that are out there. But this year has stayed very consistent around that 1,280 mark, which is a good thing. Our enrollment has always, over the last several years, other than during the year of COVID, where the majority of school districts across the state saw a decline in enrollment, our enrollment continues to steadily increase throughout the district. So that's a good sign from a stability standpoint. We had some great seasons in some of our sports this year. I mean, great seasons in all of our sports, but in particular, making it to state in both football and wrestling were very exciting. Of course, maybe I should give a little credit to the city council in Winsted for that, because our head football coach was the city administrator for a few years here. So we appreciate you borrowing him to us for the football season. And then one other exciting thing that we had happen this year that maybe not a lot of people knew about, but does happen periodically, is our band and choir take a trip periodically, and this year they were able to go to New York. New York was a location that they had to put on hold during COVID, just because of all the different restrictions and things that were going on in the city of New York and throughout the state. And so this past year they were able to go to New York. Very exciting. I know the kids really look forward to it, getting that experience. In terms of superintendent vacancies, so we currently have the posting for my position out there, and I wanted to just give you a little bit of an update. Because I think it's important to know. The posting closes in about a week, so May 8th. And I know I've had a lot of questions from people about interviews. And so just so you know, just like with a city council meeting, the interviews are open to the public. The board will be interviewing candidates. The tentative dates for those interviews are set for May 22nd and May 24th, and that depends upon the number of candidates that they choose to interview. But we've set aside 2 nights for interviews, and then of course there could be a second round process. But hoping that the position will be filled by the first week of June, so that there's a little bit of transition with myself and with the school board before I depart at the end of June. So district budget-wise, you've probably seen some articles in the Herald Journal. You remember the levy, operating levy that was on the ballot last November. That unfortunately did not pass, but we are in the midst of looking at making reductions. Currently, we've got about $550,000 in potential reductions that we are considering making. There's been a little bit of delay on that, because if you've been following anything with the legislature, or trying to follow anything with the legislature, there's been a lot of talk about additional funding coming to schools. And we stay pretty up to date on those things throughout the legislative session. But unfortunately, they haven't made a decision yet. And I think a lot of it has to do with Yes, there's going to be additional funding, and we have an idea on what that might be, but there's always things of, well, what kinds of conditions or restrictions might there be with that funding? That's always a concern and a question. And until we know that, we've kind of held off on making some of our decisions. In terms of our budget reductions, though, I'm happy to say that while we don't ever want to see people leave the school district and system, and this is the first time that I've had to go through budget cuts in 14 years, other than a few minor adjustments with the budget on an annual basis that all school districts take a look at. We're not looking at removing any or cutting any people. We have some positions that have been vacated due to retirement or resignations. And so those are the positions that we are targeting. There may be some people that might be shifting around a little bit, especially at Miss Olson's level, where you have people who are licensed K-6 teachers. But we're trying the best to do that, because once you put your time and effort and energy and funding into training and professional development for someone, the last thing you want to see is have them, head out the door. And so trying to do the best that we can with that. We're also looking at, in overall terms of operations, and this is where it is really a challenge for those of you that maybe have been on the council for a number of years or who have been part of the community for a number of years. Well, first of all, you will all know that, we operate 3 school district facilities. Prior to the middle school and high school being able to be combined, it was 4 for some time. And when you think about, and you guys, I know you think about this all the time in terms of your operations, it can be really difficult when you're operating so many different facilities with, a population of 1,280 students. So when you think of economy of scale and some of those kinds of things, transportation and so forth and so on, it can be a real challenge. About 80% of our budget is in people. So when you think about 20% left over for operations, there's probably not going to be a whole lot you can find that you want to trim back on. People do get angry when you turn down the heat or when you don't turn up the AC a little bit and things like that. So, of course, we want people to be comfortable too. But in any case, we're going through all of those things right now. I would anticipate that at the next board meeting on Monday, the board will make some decisions on those reductions for moving into next year. And then the last thing, I'll just update you a little bit, because you'll hear probably a little bit about it in the newspaper, and then a little bit more coming up in the fall. Our bonds from 2014 are the call date is coming for those. 2 months ago, when I met with Ellers, our financial consultants, the potential savings for those bond refinances that call in January of 2024 were looking really good. The last 3 weeks actually, the rates have increased on municipal bonds a little bit, and so there will still potentially be some savings. They're thinking that it's just kind of a swing right now, and that as more districts reach their call date around the same time that we will, that there'll be more eagerness to have some better rates out there for municipal bond refinancing. But that would be an opportunity for us to be able to save some money for the taxpayers, or also consider, and I know you all understand this a little bit too, aging facilities. Even though our facilities are relatively new, you always have things like parking lots, rooftop units, roofs, and things like that. And may the board be able to target a project, maybe 5 years out, to say we'd like to invest some of those funds into some capital facility improvements as roofs start to age and reach year 20, to plan for that accordingly. So those are some of the things that we're working on from a district standpoint. Again, I just want to thank the city council for all their support of the district during my time in Howard Lake, Waverly, Winsted. And I think next I will turn it over to Ms. Olson to talk about elementary things.
Yeah, before you leave, we'd like to wish you well
Thank you.
on your new endeavor. And since you came to HLWW, you haven't aged a bit.
Really?
No.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Good evening. As Mr. Selner mentioned, I'm the elementary principal for both Winsted and Humphrey Elementary Schools, and just wanted to share a little bit about what's happening in the world of elementary school. May is typically a an on-the-go kind of month. It's very busy with activity and field trips and experiential learning. But some of the things that really kind of set us apart from some of the things that we're doing, one feather in our cap, I guess, would be one of the programs is called Laker Proud. And it's a kind of a mentoring and building a community within our school. We have adults that are assigned a small mixed age group of students, about 10 to 14 kids, and they remain with that adult throughout their time at Winstead Elementary. So it's a combination of K through 4 students, and they meet on a monthly basis. They talk about different things, making and keeping friends, handling conflicts, doing some team building things, but it really helps build that community within the school. And that's something that we really focus on is working on that family and community connection. So that's been a nice addition for us. We've also started a mentoring program this year with our high school students. So we have about 43 students that are coming from the high school to Winstead Elementary to meet with our 4th grade students. It's a nice bridge to build some of those things, and we're also doing the same at Humphrey Elementary. But it's been a nice way to get to know a little bit more about what happens at the high school level, and between the counselors and the at both buildings, they've been able to collaborate and add some ideas for that. Yeah.
What is the student population in each building?
So Winstead Elementary K through 4 is about 192, I believe. Humphrey Elementary is about 285.
Okay.
So we're a 2-section school at Winstead and a 3-section school at Humphrey currently.
Okay.
So, great question. Talking about a little bit more about those community partnerships, one of the things that we really pride ourselves in is trying to get involved within the school community and the Winstead community proper. So we've got monthly visits to the St. Mary's Care Center. We are tapping our fire and police and library and post office for multiple opportunities. We will be taking a walk tomorrow with our Walk to School Day. So if you see a whole lot of littles walking from Glen Super Value into Winstead Elementary School, we typically do one in the fall and one in the spring, and it is our spring adventure, and very appreciative of Glen to host that, or Glen's to host that space for us. But just looking at some of those other community partnerships, ATHC comes over, and they've got clients who work within our kitchen, and we were recognized as an outstanding disability employer, which is a nice partnership to have. They honored us with that award, but it's really been nice to be able to collaborate, and we look to expand that connection, doing a little bit more together with our students and their clients on a more regular basis. So in addition to that, we've got Reading Corps that's supporting our literacy support and a foster grandparent program. I mentioned the mentor program that's taking place between the middle school or the high school and the elementary. And next week we will have our 4th graders do their move-up day as we transition them into 5th grade and get them ready for that big space, lockers and combinations and getting to class on time. So it's a great opportunity for them to be kind of a low stress and ask questions before the big move happens. So
Is it harder for the student or the parent?
it might be a little bit harder for the parents, but yeah. Any questions that you might have for me happening at the elementary? Feel free to come in anytime. Our doors are open. We'd love to welcome you and learn a little bit more about what you're doing in the off time as well. So we're very open to having volunteers. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Stephanie Keene, high school principal. I just want to start by echoing the comments of Mr. Stellner and Ms. Olson, just that it's been an incredible year for the Howard Lake Waverly Winstead District, and there are many things that we've had to celebrate along the way. I'll kind of talk about a few of the same things, whether it be in terms of some of our mentorship programs and our successes within our activities. But I would say from our football to our fine arts to our FFA, we have done exceptionally well this year. We even have some of our speechies, as they call themselves, participating in the national competition coming up next week in Chanhassen. And so just looking at some of the things that they've been able to do throughout the year in terms of highlighting their achievements and just, within the building as well, serving as leaders, serving as mentors with our elementary students. It's been nothing short of amazing, so it's been a great year to come in and take the reins and just be able to be a part of that and the excitement that comes with it. The years are always busy, but this is the sprint of the year, and so we've got a lot of exciting things going on in the month of May. We just wrapped up a couple weekends ago our spring play, and looking forward, we have our band concert for the spring next week on Wednesday. Our choir concert will be the following week on the 17th, and then we have our student awards night on May 15th. Our FFA chapter banquet will be May 12th. And then obviously our major culminating event, which is our graduation on June 4th at 2 p.m. Although we are looking at different cuts within our programming pieces, our teachers are hard at work trying to find ways that they can revamp their current offerings and what are some other things that we can be doing within our programming amidst all of that. And so one of the areas that we're looking to kind of build and revamp our curriculum is within our business offerings. And so Dr. Hendrickson has been hard at work looking at ways we can tie into some more of those CTE offerings and some more CIS offerings to offer our students some of those real-world experiences within that challenging and relevant curriculum. Looking at some of our partnerships, so we have our Wright Tech Center, and looking at our semester 2 enrollments, we have 11 that are taking the face-to-face classes there daily, and then 17 are participating in their job placement program. And then as we look at our enrollments for next year, we have 22 that have enrolled for the full year. So you could, the number for the full year this year and next year are pretty similar at that 22 mark, about 11 per semester. And then 21 who are participating in the job placement opportunities. One of the things that we have going on this week is we have our Mad City Money event, and so it's a financial literacy opportunity for our juniors where we have a bunch of booths set up, and that'll be taking place on May 4th. And what they receive is a budget, and then they navigate each different station, and the intent of each station is to get them to bust their budget at their station, just learning what expenses are, how to manage your money, how to balance a checkbook, how to project and forecast, and how to best meet your family's individual's needs. They walk in and they get a job and a budget and a family story, if you will, where they've got all of their factors and costs identified. And then, like I said, they travel from whether it be the real estate booth, the auto booth, or home and household type goods. Like I said, each booth's intent is to try and get them to bust their budget. So just getting them thinking about, okay, what does it mean to buy a car? What does it cost to keep a car? And all of those different pieces. So we're looking forward to hosting that on the 4th. And then a final highlight, we've received a donation from the Legion, and we've got a TV posted in our Commons area where we can highlight our military veterans who have attended the Howard Lake Waverly Winsted School District. And so looking at getting as many pictures as we can to honor our graduates who have served in the armed forces. And then just the last piece is too, like Ms. Olson said, just looking for ways that we can continue to partner with the communities so that our students know what opportunities are out there for them inside all of our communities to keep our people here. And then just ways that we can learn more about what's going on and how we can better build that partnership between the school and the community.
I have a question. Do you have a government day for your students where they come and maybe come in to see how cities work, operate, councils, meetings?
We don't, but we could certainly
would
look at
welcome
something
you.
like that.
I mean, that would, invite would be to Trinity also. They can sit in, we could even adjust if we needed to, we could have our meeting early so they could see how the meetings work. They could follow the staff, they can talk to the police chief, they can talk to the fire chief, public works. Maybe it'll give them an idea of that there are some other jobs out there besides, I don't know, what they've already been accustomed to. But I mean, we'll offer the time and the place.
I think that would be great.
We've
I know
also,
that McLeod County just did that with some students from Glencoe, and they shadowed they even went over to the judicial side.
Did
We
they
don't
have
have
a
that here,
whole
but-
class participate, or did they break it into
I
different?
don't know if it was class specific or if it was subject specific. I guess it would work either way. We have the room. And I think, I shouldn't speak for the staff, but I think they would welcome that, and it's a nice way to share.
I think that would be great. All right. Thank
I
you.
don't know what the rest of the council, maybe they don't want to come to another meeting, early meeting. You know, if you're going to start it at 7 in the morning, I don't think a lot of us will want to be there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Following their rules of order, but maybe we could bring the FFA team that
I'm too old to learn new tricks.
goes to nationals often in terms of their organization meetings, and it's amazing what they do with the Robert's Rules of Order and how they're moving through their meetings. So
It's the toughest part is to make sure you keep everybody on subject and you cover it. Once you got that, everything else just kind of falls into place.
Are you indicating you've seen some deficiencies here this evening?
I started my comment
Okay.
saying I've always been impressed
Okay.
with the city council and the way they follow those.
Jeff, you're excused. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yes, thank you all.
We've come to the open forum section of the meeting. If anybody wants to address the council, please step up. State your name, your address, function.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Justin, Police Department. Just want to remind the citizens, a couple years ago, the city council passed an ordinance regarding trailers, boats, other items on the street, parking. There's a limit of 72 hours. Those items can be parked on the street. We've noticed that there's been some fish houses parked on the street for longer. So I just want you to know that this week we'll be addressing that with education. And then also with blight enforcement. We do blight enforcement all year long, but now with the warmer weather, just want to remind you, make sure your vehicles are all in running order, parked where they should be parked, and please mow your lawn. Thank you.
Thanks.
And keep the clippings on your lawn.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
What about vehicles protruding out into the street? Is that something that you,
Yep, if it
Pay
creates
attention.
an obstruction that could cause a danger, yes,
Oh.
we will address that.
okay. And then regarding the new officer, I take it there's a probationary period.
Correct.
I saw the two of you on a stop. It wasn't me, thankfully, but how long does that last?
Yep, so we're in the field training process right now. Typically, that field training process is anywhere from a month and a half to 3.5 months. And then after that, from the point of hire, which would be the 18th of April with that individual, there's a 1-year probation. Now, that can be extended if need be, but it's generally 1-year probation.
So that's done with anybody regardless of their experience?
Correct.
Okay, because he's not a brand-new officer?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Justin. Anybody else for the council? If not, we don't have a city administrator present tonight, but we do have our new city administrator. You want to come up and just say a few words about why you want to be our new city administrator? Being it's official after tonight, after we do some signings here.
All right. Well, my name's Neil Schlegel. I am the potential new, I guess, almost official, new city administrator in Winsted. I guess the same reason that I talked about in the interviews of why I want to be part of this. I'm really excited for what this town has done in the past, and I'm actually really, really excited about being a part of its future and what we can all do together here and how we can grow.
Thank you much. Any questions for our new potential?
Learn quick.
Well, we're just glad you attended the workshop and tonight's meetings to get an idea of what's cooking, because there's a lot ahead.
There's a little bit, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit. It's just a smidgen. But we'll look forward to working with you. So glad to have you on board
Yep.
when that becomes official in 30 days.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anybody else have any announcements? Then I look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn?
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.